So thank you for this very inspiring talk. We have a few moments for some questions from the audience. So anybody? Yes.
Good morning, and thank you to each of you for your presence here, and in general for your presence in our world. I'm curious to hear from each of you. So I'm a graduate student currently studying kind of the intersection of interfaith leadership, and I'm curious to hear how you would deal with the issue of kind of women leadership in interfaith roles, given that in each of the Abrahamic traditions, this has been a challenge that's come up for women leadership. And so I'm curious to hear from you, female interfaith leadership.
Yes, we appreciate the question. When we started together, we had no idea that we'd be still working together 15 years later. You know, we met around the event of 9/11 and of marking the first anniversary. Had we known that we would still be working together the way it's developed, one of us would have been a woman. And it probably would have been Don. We've grown to love Don, so we're not willing to trade him in. But we are very aware of that. The first time we were able to work with 3 women representative of the 3 faiths was in Los Angeles some years ago. And we do everything we can to promote the equality of men and women and to support women taking leadership in interfaith dialogue.
The vulnerability required for interfaith dialogue is more, I think, a feminine trait than a masculine one. And so part of our hope for interfaith dialogue is that we will, as a world, find a balance between masculine and feminine sensibilities. Because right now we live in a very strongly patriarchal, masculine culture, world culture, where vulnerability is very, very, very hard to come by. So women have the potential to be even greater leaders than men. And so we encourage women, especially, to do what we have done, to get to know the other, to learn to share, to become more vulnerable, and to strengthen interfaith dialogue.
In Islam, the women say the Quran is women-friendly, but the culture has hijacked it. The women say that there's no such thing as the Quran says this or that. The question is, who says the Quran says that? It's almost 100% men. So some things we can do immediately. In our house of worship, we make sure that when we address God in the feminine gender as often as we do in the male pronoun. Second thing we have done very progressive is some of our Islamic Friday prayers are led by women, and they give the khutbah. It has aroused the ire of a lot of men, but this is what we're supposed to do, to evolve. So we can take certain definitive steps to counter the unequal status of women.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience?
Hi, my name is Rabbi Bob Kaplan. I direct something called the Center for Community Leadership here in New York. It's part of the Jewish Community Relations Council in New York. And I'm speaking with a little bit of salt and pepper in my beard, is the issue of not only interfaith, how do we, and we're about to start something called the Moses Joshua Initiative, bringing together not only interfaith leaders, but intergenerational leadership as well. Because that seems to be one of the growing chasms, you used that word before, in our society, is that there's not only a lack of dialogue between the faith groups, there's a real lack of dialogue and learning between generations as well. So I'd like to get some of your insight on that.
A lot of our insights we got when we traveled all over the country was from the very young people who dared to ask difficult questions, but also from some of the very elderly people who had cut their ties with their vested tribal interests. And they asked some very difficult questions from their extraordinary repository of wisdom. So we honor that. And as we're getting older, we're saying that's essential, that you must listen to the elders. And that was the basis of our book, Religion Gone Astray.
I was just going to say it's a great question. I don't know what makes you think we're old. Yeah. Nice save, but
You meant when we get older. Yes, I understood completely. As a child, I understand.
Part of this whole thing, is to discover where the chasms exist. And there are more and more because we live in such an incredibly polarized culture, society, era. And it's like discovering those polarizations and doing what we can to heal them. So I applaud what you're doing. It's great. Yasher koach.
And I would say that the desire for interfaith dialogue and the hope that it can bring exists deep within every human heart. And the younger the person, the better the opportunity to...
I forgot my iPhone in the Uber. I'm just getting it back.
exists.
Each of us in our trip are required to lose one thing. In Portland, I lost my appointment book. I left it in the Uber there. And this morning, Brother Jamal.
Hey, all right.
The power of
Phone
faith.
is
I was
back.
lost,
Life
but
is
I'm
good.
found.
All right, life may continue now. So I think what you're doing, I'm just saying what you're doing is enormously important and is very hopeful. Ibu Patel in Chicago is doing a lot of work with youth in interfaith dialogue, and we applaud what he has done, and we applaud what you are doing.
Should we also add that besides intergenerational, it is critical that we include an interfaith, intra-faith work in Islam between Shia, Sunni, Ahmadiyyas, and other people, as also in your traditions. That's critical work.
Yes. Okay, thank you. We have time for one more question. Yes.
Thank you very much. I must say that I enjoyed this presentation. One of your opening statements was to the effect that somebody said if God had wanted us to all be one, we would have been one. But he decided to create these diversities. I love the presentation. I love the uniqueness of the different faiths as exhibited here. My problem is, how do we enjoy shared humanity, shared spirituality, and continue to maintain our uniqueness?
I think that's what we've been attempting to model. It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to live it. My own experience is that through our relationship, my roots to the spiritual treasures in Judaism have deepened. Through each other's eyes, we have been able to achieve fresh visions of our own traditions. So our experience has been that our own identity is not watered down. Our own identity is deepened, and the only thing we can speak from is that. It's the same thing when we meet each other as human beings, or when we get into intimate relationships, primary relationships with each other. We don't become each other. In an authentic relationship, we are supported in becoming more who we are. And we feel that same dynamic holds in an interfaith setting.
I would say our uniqueness is what sharpens our ability to see the universals that connect us. We all see things from a slightly different point of view. We're all individuals, whether we represent different faith traditions or even, in my case, different aspects of Christianity. But just as individuals, we do not see things exactly the same way. What a boring world it would be if we were all alike. So it's our uniqueness that provides not only a vitality, but the ability to perceive the difference between the universals that connect us and the particulars that do seem to be differences, but which help us to focus on how important those universals are and what we can contribute to them.
As Brother
Yeah.
Jamal says,
Yes.
if God wanted, if God
It
wanted,
could meet all of us.
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, yeah.
you could say that.
Yeah, sure. So, like I repeated, if Allah wanted, He could have made all of us one single community, but God chose to create diversity so we might come to know the other. I also wanted to say that very critical, the elders have told us that if my relationship with my religion or my holy book comes in the way of my relationship with you, then for sure it will come in the way of my relationship with God. And one other point, very critical, I look at it another different way. How do I deal with someone who is adversarial, who's like opposed to me? The great traditions say, please, make a discernment, a distinction between a person's behavior and the person's being, his or her essence. The behavior might be unacceptable, evil, but the person's being, Christ nature, Allah nature, Elohim nature, Buddha nature, is sacrosanct, it's sacred. And as I take the right action, for example, an Islamic mystic says, please protect yourself. Don't allow yourself to be abused. But I beg you, as you take the right action, do not keep this person's being or essence out of your heart. And they say just this discernment between behavior and being has the power to shift heaven and earth.
Thank you.